I'm not gonna lie to y'all, gang. It's been a while, but I'm definitely back this time. I've had a lot of, let's say, shifts go on in my life in the past year or so. It's been about a year. We're going to talk about that in another date. We're going to talk about that in another time. At this point, I'm just ready to get back into content. I'm ready to make fire videos like I did, not last basketball season, but the year before, and just get back into the grind. Road to 10K type shit, you feel me? Like, just something simple like that, you feel me? But in all seriousness, if you are still here and a part of the channel, I appreciate you. You have no idea how far your support has taken me. Some of you guys have reached out to me asking me about videos. Some of you guys have reached out asking me about me, just in general, making sure I'm cool. And I appreciate each and every one of you for that. I do want to say we will have a talk about, you know, what happened at a later date when things kind of settle a little bit, once we're back into the swing of things a little bit more. But I did want to take that time in this video before we even start anything. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. That's all I can say from the bottom of my heart. We're going to continue to grind. We're going to continue to grow. And I appreciate you guys supporting me along the way. Let's get into it. Now, for the past 2 years now, I've done top 10 rankings for every position in the NBA right before the season starts. Now, I will admit last year kind of dropped the ball a little bit, but it is what it is. We back at it. This week, I'm going to give you guys point guard, shooting guard, small forwards, power forwards, and centers. I thought about doing 6-man, but there's no telling what rotations are or what they could be. Well, no, there's telling, but you just never know. Some teams could decide someone else becomes a 6-man for the entirety of the year, and that was just a game I didn't really want to play. Maybe we could revisit that on a later date, but for now, we're going to go with the top 10 in each position. Of course, as always, we're starting with the point guards in this one. And I just wanted to preface this video just by saying 10 through 7, very, very, very difficult to rank. So those will be interchangeable. I will state what players are interchangeable and stuff going forward. We're going to have sort of a ticker kind of thing at the bottom showing stats, some of the things they accomplished last season, and I guess I would say some of the notes with regard to why I put them in that spot. But with most of the small talk out of the way, let me conclude this intro by saying, if you're not new here, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, just to make sure this video hits the algorithm, more basketball watchers can see this video, and in turn, you have more basketball watchers to talk about, have a little community where we can all meet up and talk basketball. And if you are new, subscribe only if you enjoy the video. If you don't enjoy the video, let me know in the description. I said the description. You know what? Subscribe if you breathe air. Simple as that. Let's get into the video. And coming in at number 10, and again, like I said, 10 through 7, pretty interchangeable. I have Trae Young. Trae Young didn't have that bad of a year. Of course, he battled injuries throughout the year, so that did kind of play into why it kind of dropped him a little bit in my personal top 10, because I do think Trae Young has the potential to be a top 7 kind of guy in the league, maybe even topping out at like top 3, top 4 kind of guys. But with that said, in just 54 games, Trae Young is one of those guys that is going to stay in the top 10 for the most part for the majority of his career. Trae Young is just one of 2 players to finish the season leading the league in both points and assists, and this happened the same years the Hawks went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Make sure you guys keep that in mind. Trae remains extremely productive, putting up 25 and 10, which has found him becoming an all-star for the 3rd time in his career. The only caveat here is that the Hawks haven't won over 43 games since 2015. Of course, they were on pace to do so the COVID year, but we of course know how that year ended. This was a year to test out what it would look like with backcourt running mate DeJounte Murray, and of course he was traded because it just did not work out. And things probably will get better for both parties as they're both 2 ball dominant guys that love to get their teammates involved. The main thing in my opinion that didn't really work for this team was the fact that Trae Young isn't much of an off-ball guy, and when DeJounte was on the court, we saw some issues with them clashing with regard to being on-ball players. Now Trae Young is elite offensively, but his efficiency, of course, does need to get better, and it has gotten better as he ages, while his defense is completely non-existent. Not even going to talk about that, especially like I genuinely think Trae Young is like 5'10", 5'11" at most. That 6 foot, 6'1" that he's listed at, it's a stretch. Come on now. But regardless, I'm not sure what direction the Atlanta Hawks are going. But one thing that is for sure is that Trae's production cannot be denied. With the emergence of Jalen Johnson and the first overall pick, Zachary Richaudière, going to the Atlanta Hawks, there is some promise for their future, and that will see Trae Young being able to meet that same productive output that he had when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Heading over to number 9, I have Tyrese Haliburton, the funkiest jump shooter in the league right now, who I can honestly say just passed Trae Young on my list this past season. Of course, I'm gonna keep saying it, interchangeable. But with that said, he is the Pacers floor general and a huge reason as to why Indiana made the conference finals this year in the first place. Hali looks like the best pure passing guard in the NBA right now, while also being capable of scoring 20 points per game, even with an uncharacteristically poor shooting season that he just had. Now, of course, his poor shooting season can be explained away by injury, which Hali did try to tough it out throughout the year to meet that 65 game requirement to, of course, get some of those accolades that help him hit that max and even super max threshold with regard to contract outlooks. With that said though, even though a lot of people might scrunch their face at this and playing through injury and maybe even, risking furthering that injury, it did work out for Haliburton, who did see an All-NBA appearance this season. Even with mediocre shooting from deep, the run to the conference finals for the Pacers was the first appearance in over a decade. And that's an incredibly impressive feat for a team that had to go through the number 1 seed Bucks. Now, I fully expect him to have another All-NBA campaign this year, and even seeing the Indiana Pacers thrive to newer heights. Now, it's hard for me to see them in the Eastern Conference Finals or even surpassing the Eastern Conference Finals. But one thing is for sure, this team is growing and this team will be a problem for years to come. Moving on to number 8, I have De'Aaron Fox, who I personally think had a very, very underrated season. The Kings not necessarily reaching expectations kind of hurt him in this regard, in my humble opinion. And I genuinely think if the Kings met or even exceeded the expectations that they set from the year prior, De'Aaron Fox would have got ample recognition and he wouldn't have got snubbed for so many end of season awards like he inevitably happened. Like I said, Swipa had a solid season this year, upping his scoring average by almost 2 points to go with 6 assists and 2 steals a game, while having a career shooting year from 3, making 37% of them. What makes this even better is that he was shooting at least 3 threes nightly, so it wasn't at a very low rate. I already alluded to this before, but I'm gonna keep saying it. I think he was snubbed from a few end of year awards. That probably has to do with the fact that the Kings are more of a smaller market team with regard to the California teams that we do have at our disposal, and them having a disappointing 46-36 season, which saw them missing the playoffs after making the play-in. Regardless, De'Aaron Fox remains one of the best with his lightning speed, much improved off the dribble shooting, and I humbly believe this next season will be the best we see from De'Aaron in his career, leading to at least a third-team All-NBA selection, and maybe even an All-Defensive selection if we see his steal per game number go up a little bit. Moving on to number 7, I do want to just say this before we talk about who's at number 7. Now that I'm seeing, and I guess I'd say recording the video, I'd say 10 through 8 are fluid. I think number 7 is quite comfortably where he's at. He's potentially going to rise, likely will rise a little bit more as the season progresses. I fully expect it myself. But at number 7, I have Tyrese Maxey. The reigning most improved player and the Sixers lead guard was undeniably snubbed from all NBA honors, despite averaging a smooth 26-6, 1 steal, while also making 45% of his shots. Maxey is one of those guys I'm super high on, and I expected this kind of leap to be taken, especially once Harden was out of Philly. the ball was fully in Tyrese Maxey's hands. He was an integral part in helping the Sixers finish off the season strong, as Joel was out for much of the campaign, which did hurt the team throughout the year. And this adds to why he's risen so much for me personally on the point guard list. He held down the fort, helped them make the playoffs, all the while Joel Embiid was still out, and he was essentially the lone scorer for the Sixers. Now, of course, we did see guys emerge like Ricky Council, Kelly Oubre even has some good games, and we saw guys like that, but for the most part, we got to see Tyrese Maxey with the keys, and the first year of Maxey with keys looked great. At just 23 years of age, he's coming off his first All-Star nod, and I fully expect him to enter the top 5 next year, next time I make this list. Now that I'm talking about making the list again, I should probably make a postseason list, where we ended out after where we started out. That's probably a good idea going forward. Let's put that on the list, Steph. I know you see this while editing. Let's put it on the list, brother. Now I got my editorial notes out of the way. We're going to move on to number 6. And number 6 is Damian Lillard, which this one's kind of tough. I do still think Dame is better than Maxey, but I also think Maxey is going to pass Dame very, very soon. Probably in the next 25 to 30 games. But that's neither here nor there. Now, last year was a year of change for Dame, who didn't quite get acclimated to being on the Bucks, and it definitely showed. Now, with that said, for the first time in his career, he was probably the second best player on his team. So this adjustment was very different than anything Dame has been accustomed to and anything we've seen him be a part of. Even off the court, Dame was dealing with some issues involving his marriage that ended in a divorce. But I digress. Despite the huge change, Dame still averaged 24-7 while hitting 42% of his shots. And this being a drop-off, it speaks to the greatness of his career as a player. Now, the most concerning part about this drop-off was seeing his 3-point percentage falter a little bit, going down to 35%. But even still, personally, I believe in Dame. Even when people count him out, you gotta believe in Dame. I expect him to get back closer to 40% from deep. And of course, I blame the new scenery, new coach, even the firing of the coach mid-season to get an even worse coach in the helm. I blame the drop-off in that. Then, like I mentioned before, the off-the-court things going on, having to move from Portland to Milwaukee. And there's just so many other areas outside of the game that were being affected, including the things that were being effective inside the game. Now this year, I think Dame will reach a little bit of normalcy, having a good summer, being able to settle into his new home in Milwaukee, maybe even getting outside, experiencing the city, because I hear Milwaukee's not that bad of a city, so I do expect Dame to be more like himself again. Coming in at number 5, I have Ja Morant, and honestly, I don't see Ja dropping any lower than 5. I expect him to be top 3 very, very soon. Of course, that's barring Steph and Curry either having a crazy drop-off or just retiring, one of the two. But for the most part, Ja is going to be number 4 and number 5. For the future outlook of this list, that's just my guess. We're going to see going forward. But as it stands right now, number 5, Ja Morant. And that's just 9 games played, which is insane to think about. And even after mentioning those 9 games that he played, I think so many people forgot about Ja so fast. And in the meager 9 games he did play, he also put a lot of people on notice. He basically missed the entire year due to suspension, then injury after coming back. And for me, it didn't lower him. I'm not big on an injury tax, so I'm not even going to go there. In suspension, the guy didn't even play. So I'm not even going to take that away from him as a player. I believe he's going to come back just as explosive and energetic as we normally see him. He's had a full year and offseason to get right. And though he has said he hasn't been quite 100% at the time of writing this video, I wrote this video, I think back in August. I did see an interview where he was talking about he wasn't 100%. I'm sure he's probably at 100% now with training camp. But either way, his last full healthy year was in 2023. We saw him become an all-star, and I think another year like that is coming. we're going to see both that he gets an all-star nod, but also gets all NBA honors, which he did not get in 2023. This Memphis Grizzlies team is going to be very, very good going forward. They picked up a guy in Zach Edey that they really, really needed because Jaren Jackson Jr. is very light in the ass with regard to rebounding, and Zach Edey helps clean that up. And they have more of a paint presence on both ends of the floor with Zach Edey than they did with Jaren Jackson Jr. So not only does Ja look like he'll have a great year, but the Memphis Grizzlies as a whole, they look like they're going to be one of the top teams in the West, in my humblest of opinions. But at number 4, we're going to move on. And I got Jalen Brunson, who, again, I think will hover around this area. Now, I think Ja will pass him with the amount of games played and stuff like that. So Brunson would probably be 5, Ja 4, and then my top 3 is going to fall the way that it falls. You guys will see. Stick around. Don't leave the video yet. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not giving it up like that now. Come on now. But anyway, number 4, Jalen Brunson. Let's talk about him. Now, with another breakout season last year, leading the Knicks to their winningest season in the last 11 years, dating back to the 2012-2013 Knicks, who won 54 games and also lost in the second round of the playoffs. Many people question whether Brunson could be a true playmaker after leaving Luka, and in a lot of ways, I think he surpassed people's expectations to the point where eyebrows were raised when he took a massive $150 million pay cut from the Knicks. Albeit, it was due to the new CBA and being smart for the future of the Knicks and actually having help going forward. But even still, that is a massive pay cut. If you ask me to take this pay cut, I'm asking for a trade. Simple. Now, it sucks that I wrote this video so long ago because events has transpired to where I can't even read the next excerpt of the video. So I'm gonna freestyle a little bit. We're gonna talk about it. Last year was the first year where we actually were gonna see Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson together. But then we saw Julius Randle get hurt, have some issues to where he was off the floor. But the thing is, and even Knicks management saw, Jalen Brunson was still keeping the ship afloat and even in ways playing a lot better. Then the trade deadline came around. But nothing could have prepared me for Karl Anthony Towns being traded to the Knicks for Julius Randle. Nothing could have prepared me for that. But what I can say is, one, Knicks video coming out soon because we gotta talk about that squad and the trade. This is now a team that I think may be able to compete with Boston in some ways. Now, in a 7-game series, I don't think so because I think their depth is a little bit lacking. They got campaign coming off the bench to, come on, bro. I'm not even about to talk about that dude. But with that said, JB answered the call. JB is largely the reason why that Julius Randle trade took place because I think the Knicks saw we don't need the defense that Randle brought to us. We need more offense to help JB because, of course, JB is going to see more coverages, more defenses. He's going to be the one that's game planned again. Now you get Cat. It's another way to be able to expand that offense and make it even better. But even still, we see Cat now gets reunited with Tibbs, who is a familiar face, and I think will bode well for the Knicks going forward. But at number 4, before we even get into that Knicks talk, I got Jalen Brunson. Now, before we hop into the top 3, if you made it this far into the video, please do me the biggest favor. Drop a comment below, like the video if you've made it this far, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it. I'm not gonna waste your time with the small talk, so let's hop into number 3, which is Stephen Wardell Curry. Now, I'm gonna admit, this is likely the lowest I've ever had Steph on any list ever, but this mostly comes from the fact that he is aging, despite it not looking like it, and the younger guys that are ahead, they've just hit their stride. They're starting to hit their peak. So this isn't necessarily a Steph got worse kind of thing, but rather 2 guys who are just younger are better at the moment and they have higher upside as well. Now, with regard to his on-court play, Steph was magnificent per usual. An all-star who put up 26 and 5, making 41% of his shots, obtaining 3rd team All-NBA honors, and despite the great production, Golden State, of course, missed the playoffs for the 2nd time in 4 years, and Curry's next season will be his age 36 season. And of course, I don't think or foresee any drop-off in sight, but for the chef, especially after we saw him explode in that gold medal game, I do think it is pertinent that the Warriors get some help around him so he can at least try to make a run at number 5. And then talks will get real wicked with regard to LeBron, Steph, and that GOAT conversation as a whole. Now, next year, I think we will see a lot more of a passing the torch sort of situation where Steph kind of, I don't want to say drops off the list, but I think he'll start to take more of a backdoor approach than what we've seen Steph do, in his prime. But let's make one thing clear. Steph is still arguably the greatest point guard of all time. Moving on to number 2, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I know a lot of people watching this probably are like, I don't know, I might put Shai above Luka because of the defensive aspect. But Luka is such a plus on the offensive end that it was hard for me to do it. It might happen, but as it stands right now, Luka's number 1, SGA is number 2. Let's talk about SGA. MVP runner-up, Shai had a career year, and he moved mountains in my mind with regard to the doubts I had about him as a player. He answered quite literally every question I had. He's extremely efficient, arguably the deepest bag in the league, and one of the toughest players to guard in the NBA as a whole. We even saw clips of former DPOY Marcus Smart explaining that SGA might just be tougher to guard than Luka. While, that is subjective, I do think there is a real argument for SGA being the best point guard in the NBA, especially with his massive gap on Luka with regard to the defensive end. And I know that argument is subjective, but Marcus Smart was a DPOY in the best league ever, and he does have to guard both of those guys. So take that as you may. Shai is a mid-range demon, shifty, and he's great at getting to the line and knocking them down, which is very, very underrated or also overhated, because I will add, being a great scorer includes getting to the line. Now, with OKC getting better through their addition of Hartenstein and Caruso, SGA can very well be in line for his first career MVP while also leading the Thunder to the top seed in the West once again. This is a team that is poised to go deep in the playoffs, and I think actually has a shot to make the finals this year. And of course, with the SGA spill out of the way, we moving on to number 1, and I've already admitted it is Luka Doncic. Of course, who else but Luka? Luka, for the second year in a row, he checks out at number 1 on my list. And it wasn't the easiest decision for the first time in 2 years, but considering the season he just had, the career's worth of evidence thus far, and his willingness to at least try on the defensive end in the playoffs, which I might add, he wasn't a terrible defender up until they had to see Boston. I think it's fair to say Luka can comfortably be in the number 1 spot leading into this basketball season. Luka continues to improve year after year, surpassing the last and almost having a career season each year. Most guys we see might have like 2 years of mirroring numbers, but Luka, he's one of the few I can unequivocally say may just be a Hall of Famer just 6 years into his career. Now, since we're talking about Luka, I just want to put this into perspective. The only players to make first team All-NBA 5 years in a row since the year 2000 are Bron, Shaq, Kobe, Timmy, Giannis, KD, and Dwight Howard. This is an amazing group of company to be a part of, but it's even crazier once you realize Luka started this streak after his rookie year. So his second year on, he's been a lock for first team All-NBA. That's how good Luka is. Luka is one of the best guards, not just statistically, but it shows in his All-NBA honors as one of the top guards in the NBA. Now, me personally, I'm likely going to go ahead and put in that future for this year so that we can make some bread. I'll let you know how it goes towards the end of the year. It might be tough because SGA, well, it's positionless now, so we could see SGA and Luka on there at the same time. But with that said, I wouldn't be surprised if this year we saw Luka win his first MVP. I had him chosen last year over Shai and, a couple other guys. But this year, I think is a year that it'll genuinely be him and Shai fighting as the top 2 vying for that MVP. And, Ant is going to be in the mix too. Don't worry about that. But we're talking about point guards in this video. I guess I'd say we were talking about point guards in this video because that has led me to the conclusion of this video. And of course, as always, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what your top 10 is down below in the comments if you have one. If you don't have one, let me know how you feel about my list, how you feel about my placement, my rankings, and why you agree or disagree. That's all I got for you guys in this one. It is your boy TB with the greatest hoop stories in the base on the tube. And as always, I'm out. Peace.